Hello, welcome to Miss Barbara's Story Hour. Today I wanted to tell you about the third story about our farm in Indiana, and this one is about our cows. We ended up with 3 cows during our 3.5 years that we lived there. The first one came soon after we moved in. Tom bought her from somebody locally, and she was a Jersey because Jerseys are known for giving good milk, good rich milk. And they're also known for being very pretty. And she was. She had a sweet little dish face and a beautiful brown color, cinnamony brown color that got darker at her legs and up around her nose and around her eyes. She had big brown eyes. And her name was Melody. And even though she was small of stature, she had a big heart. In fact, Tom and I felt that she was the mother of our place. And when Tom bought her, she was ready to have a calf. And that would mean we would be able to milk her soon. But when it came time for Melody to have her calf, Tom and I were gone. We went to a Mother Earth News convention because we wanted to learn how to farm in harmony with nature. But luckily, my dad and my 17-year-old brother came out to the farm to watch over it while we were gone. And this was a good thing because my dad was born and raised on a dairy farm. In fact, I think he was a little bit in heaven being out there um, doing all the things that he knew best. So, well, the only thing he wasn't too happy about was the thunderstorm because my dad is terrified of thunderstorms. And when he was a young man, he was coming back from milking the cows one evening and he was walking through the orchard when a lightning bolt struck a tree next to him. Luckily, his dad was watching from the doorway and saw him fall, and he ran and got him. But my dad said he spent a horrible week on the couch smelling that sulfur smell. So he did not like thunderstorms, and we had some doozies in Indiana. But he got through that, and when it came time for Melody to have her calf, he was there doing his thing. He helped her have the baby, and it was a little boy, a black Angus. And he milked the cow, he milked Melody, and then he gave the bucket to my brother Carl, and he fed the calf the milk. And so they named the calf Bucket, and that turned into Bucky. Well, when we got back from our trip, we got to meet Bucky for the first time, and he was so cute. And we were very happy about how my dad took care of everything in the traditional way. But after he left, we were thinking about it. We thought it would be a shame to keep the mother and the calf separated all the time. And we were just greenhorns, but we were trying new things. So we came up with this plan. Bucky and Melody would stay together in the daytime so that Bucky could nurse, and then in the evening we would put them in separate pens in the barn. And then in the morning we'd go down and milk Melody, get our share, and put Melody and her calf back out in the field together. And this was really a great plan because one bucket of milk was enough for just the two of us. The only problem was we were having a heck of a time getting any milk in that bucket. We squeezed, I mean, how hard could it be? Just like in the movies, right? You just squeeze the udders and the milk goes in. But it wasn't happening. So I called my mom, who, it turns out, was also raised on a dairy farm. So over the phone, she taught me how to milk a cow. First, you have to pinch the top of the udder with your thumb and your forefinger to trap the milk in the teat. Then you take your other fingers and you strip the milk down into the bucket. If you don't trap the milk, then when you squeeze it, the milk just goes back up into the milk bag. So before long, we were experts, just pinching off, squeezing, and the milk made such a satisfying squirt when it went into the bucket, and it was great. Except for the times when Melody would suddenly lift up her foot, which had been all full of manure from being in the barn all night, and plop it into the nice, full, rich pail of rich, good milk. And there was nothing you could do. You had to throw it away. So I couldn't really get mad at Melody. She was so sweet, but it hurt all the same. So what did we do with all that good, rich milk? Well, we had a nice, brand new stainless steel milk pail with a lid, a stainless steel lid, and a handle. So I'd milk the cow, and then I'd carry it down to the house and go down the basement and put it on the floor where it was always 60 degrees year round. And the reason we did that is because we had disconnected or turned off our refrigerator. We were going the natural way, so we had to do it the old-fashioned way. Then in the morning, I would go downstairs and skim off the cream that had risen to the top into a jar, and then I would take that jar and shake it and shake it and shake it until the curds of butter separated out from the white watery whey. And, kind of like little Miss Muffet eating her curds and whey. Well, I poured the whey off, and then I would mash the curds together and under water, rinsing out all the extra whey that was still in there until I got a nice little pat of butter. And sometimes I would use my grandmother's butter mold that my mother gave me. And that was a wooden frame, round wooden kind of frame with a handle, and there was a plunger inside that went up and down, and that had the mold shape on it. And so you put it over the butter, and then you would plunge it down, press it hard, lift it up, and there you had a pretty pat of butter with flowers and leaves on the top. And my mother just had this as an antique for a knickknack. So she lent it to me, and I was happy to put it to some real use. So the rest of the milk, I just poured into like this cooker for making yogurt, or used it for pancakes or all the other things that you use butter for. So Melody and her calf stayed out in that pasture next to the barn. But then when Bucky got older and didn't need to nurse anymore and he was old enough to eat grass, we put him in the other pasture on the other side of the house, and he had that field to himself. And whenever I went into the pasture by Melody, she would come running at me. And it was a little disconcerting at first, but I learned to stand my ground, and then she would just dodge at the last minute, and I swear there was a grin on her face. And the same thing when my husband would take his red Volkswagen Rabbit loaded with hay, for example, out into the pasture that Bucky was in, he would come charging and prancing and dancing up around the car. It was just so cute. So you would never think that cows are so playful and have such personalities, but they do once you get to know them. So it came time, after a couple months, to breed Melody again so that she could have another calf. Because if they don't keep having calves, you can't get milk. They will just dry up, and you can't milk them anymore. So we had a tough decision to make. Should we breed her to a black Angus bull like Bucky was, or should we breed her to a Jersey bull like Melody was? Now, the decision there was it based on what kind of a calf she would have. If she had a boy, then you'd want her to be bred to an Angus because they're good, give good quality meat, and that's really all that a male is good for. Can't milk him, and unless you want to save him to be a bull, but not too many bulls are needed. And Bucky was not a bull. When he was still a calf, Tom had a neighbor come out and he castrated him. That means he cut off his testicles so that he would be a steer, which would make him a much more gentle animal and it would make the meat taste good. Um, so I was pretty sad about that. I felt so sorry for him. I remember going out to the barn that night and trying to comfort him, just being with him a little while. But there was really nothing else we could do. It was just too dangerous to have a bull on the farm. So, and if you had a girl, then you would rather have her be bred to a Jersey because they give the good rich milk. So we made our decision, and Tom took her to a Jersey, a farmer who had a Jersey bull, and she stayed there a while. And when she came back, she was pregnant. So we had to wait almost 10 months to find out if we had made the right decision. Well, sometime late spring, I think, it came time for her to have her calf. And the delivery went like a breeze, and it was a girl. We were so happy. And because it was a girl and because she was a Jersey, she came out pretty easy. It was an easy delivery. The only problem is that Melody was not getting up. And as the day went by, we knew something was wrong because we couldn't get her up, not even to nurse her calf. So Tom found a neighbor, brought him over, and asked him to look at her. And he said, milk fever. It happens sometimes when they have an easy delivery. And if she doesn't get up soon, she may die. Whoa, that was terrible news to us. We couldn't imagine losing the heart of our farm. So that was a pretty rough day. And about in the middle of the day, I went out to the mailbox to get some mail. And there was a card for us from some people we didn't know, but somehow they had heard about us and about what we were doing, what we were trying to do on our farm. And they were sending us this card to give us support and encouragement. And it couldn't have come at a better time, a time when I needed it more. And I remember it just touched my heart, and somehow it helped me get through the rest of the day. So sometime after that, I just got a hunch. I thought, I wonder if she would eat some clover and if that would help. So I went into the front yard and I picked a bunch of clover. There wasn't any in the fields because the cows would have eaten it all by now. But since our yard was fenced off, there was plenty of clover there. So I brought her some clover and she just gobbled it up. So I went back and picked an armload and brought it. And she ate everything as fast as I brought it. And so I did armload after armload. And by evening, Melody was up and she was nursing her calf. And the crisis was averted. So the day ended well. And Melody and Clover did fine under the same system that we had set up for her and Bucky. But we had another decision to make about Clover. Should we let her keep her horns? And by the way, I guess you noticed that's how she got her name, Clover, because I felt it was the clover that uh, saved Bucky. I mean, saved Melody. So um, we decided not to cut off her horns, but to let her grow her horns, because it wasn't like she was in a big herd where that might be a problem. So it was even more disconcerting to have Melody, to have Clover come charging you in the field. But luckily, though she was feisty and independent, she was just as gentle as she was mischievous. So um, we had the 3 cows then, but the last year and a half, we didn't have any cows. And I'll tell you how that came about. First of all, in the second winter before we left, so I think it was Bucky's second winter, we decided it was time to bite the bullet and have him butchered. So Tom took him to a local group that did that, and then he went with the red Volkswagen Rabbit and picked up the meat. It was in big white 5-gallon plastic tubs, and he brought it back in the car. And I remember lifting up that trunk and seeing that raw meat chopped up in these buckets and just going, Bucky! But we didn't have too long to mourn because we were very busy. We had borrowed a pressure canner, and we were going to can all that meat because, like I said, we didn't have a refrigerator in use. And so we spent the rest of that day canning into the evening. We had to keep going until the job was finished. And we had to work fast. We had to work carefully, and we had to, cut up the meat and get it cooked in a pan and then into the jars, and then the lid screwed on, everything sanitary, get it into the pressure canner and make sure it cooked the right amount of time, and meanwhile work on the other ones and have those ready. And it was a long, stressful day. And by the time it was dark, I was as my pressure in my body was about as high as the pressure in the canner. And I was about ready to blow. I was hot. I was just stressed out. And I remember Tom just took me by the shoulders and pushed me out the front door. And seeing as it was winter and it was 5 degrees above zero, that cold air just blasted into me, but I just breathed it in. I was so overheated. But it didn't take too long. I cooled down, and then I was ready to come back in and finish the job. So by the end of that, we had 50-quart jars of Bucky meat that we kept in the basement, and our plan was to just eat it 1 jar a week, and that would last us a year. And we did a good job. We didn't die from any of the meat. So that turned out good, except for the part about Bucky that was sad. And so, taking all that into consideration and how hard it was to kill our animals, we couldn't kill the chickens to save our soul. So Tom decided we were going to go vegan, and we got rid of all the animals. He sold Melody and Clover to some local people. He sold all the chickens, and all we had was the cats. And it was a little bit of a challenge trying to find a way to get enough protein, but we did it. And just as an ending to my story, just to show you how dear Melody was and how much she was a mother of the place. One day, a couple months after we had sold Melody, Tom came back from a trip into town, and he comes in the door and he has this wide-eyed look in his eyes, and he just looks at me and says, "I saw Melody. She was in a farmer's field, just looking out over the fence." And so that's my story about our cows on our farm in Indiana. Thanks for listening.